Hello, so today we are going to go over Math Notes Box 3.1.5. Our topic today is independent and dependent variables. Our essential question is, what are the differences between the dependent and independent variables? So you are going to be asked to graph things and to define variables based off of word problems that you are receiving. So before we start going over those types of problems, we need to know what each type of variable stands for, what it means, how do we know the difference between them. So there's oftentimes you are given a coordinate plane, and on this coordinate plane, you have to decide between the x and the y axes. So I will show you that the horizontal line on a coordinate plane is the x-axis. The vertical line on the coordinate plane is the y-axis. Now we need to decide which one is independent and which one is dependent. So that's what we need to figure out. So I want you to make a T-chart. We're going to have the independent information on the left side and the dependent information on the right. Now I'm actually going to color code. I'm going to have purple and blue. So all of my independent stuff will be in purple. All my dependent information will be in blue. All right. So for an independent variable, the definition of an independent variable is a situation where one quantity does not, emphasis on does not, depend on another. So that's where one quantity does not depend on another. And then the dependent variable is the opposite of that. It's where one quantity does depend on another. So we're going to go over a couple of examples of what this means. So you have independent. If you think about independence, you're free. You don't rely on anybody, don't rely on anything. That's independent. So that's why it does not depend on anything. And then the dependent, if you're depending on somebody, that means you're counting on them to do it. You're relying on them. You're waiting for them to do it before you can do your thing. That's where you depend on another. So that's the dependent. So we're gonna think about different situations. So for example, I'm gonna do our examples. Let's say that we have age versus your height. In this situation, age is independent because your height does not depend. Your age does not depend on your height. Like just because you're 6 feet tall doesn't mean you're a certain age. So your age is the independent. And if age is the independent, that means that the height would be dependent. So your height depends on how old you are. Not all the time, because, height is a little weird. But the older you are in age, typically, the taller you are. And so let's talk about another situation. We have the miles that you've run and the calories that you've burned. So the miles run would be the independent variable because if you think about you can't burn calories without running the amount of miles. So your independent would be the miles run. And then your dependent would be the calories burned. So the more miles that you run, the more calories you burn. So the calories that you burn depends on how many miles you run. The next situation, we're going to think about the lawns mowed versus the dollars earned. So the more lawns that you mow, the more money that you earn. So the amount of money depends on how many lawns you mow. So lawns mowed would be independent. And then your dependent would be money earned or dollars earned. So these are your different situations where you need to decide between the independent and dependent. Now we need to know what axis is each on. So for the independent variable, so for the one that does not depend on another, that is actually going to be the x-axis. And then for the dependent variable, you will find that on your y-axis. So if you notice these axes were labeled, this is your x-axis, that's your y-axis. So this one is your independent. And then the y-axis, which is that vertical line, is the dependent. So the idea behind the situation is we have these two differences. So then for your summary, I want you to look at your essential question, which was what are the differences between the dependent and independent variables? So for your summary, you're going to answer that component and tell us what do you think is our major differences between these two independent and dependent variables. Thank you for watching.